Welcome to Net Tuesday. How you guys doing?
Good.
Oh, nice. Good. You're all engaged in a way. Fabulous. So, we are, for what was supposed to be the first time, except for, of course, we were here 6 days ago for a last-minute event, which we had a small group come out for. We are in our brand new home as we've moved from the W2 space, and we've now got the Hive, who offered this space to us. Kind of super grateful for that, because it's no fun finding a new venue every single month. That is depressing and tiring, and I don't like doing it. So I'm very grateful to the Hive for stepping up and saying, yes, we'll provide a home for Net Tuesday. And if you are similarly grateful and use that little tweeter thing, you can use that fancy hashtag there, Tuesday Vancouver, and basically just give them some props. Say big ups, thanks so much for being a community space. But of course we're not done with sponsors. Part of how we do our tweeting is we've actually got a pro account from our friends here in Vancouver from Hootsuite, which means I can harass you through all sorts of different social media channels easily and then track whether you actually ignored me or actually clicked on something. So I'm also really grateful for their support. It's allowed us to go from me tweeting to actually starting to build a bit of an army. And if you are interested in being part of that Vancouver social media tweeting army, you should talk to me, because we are actually recruiting right now for some new volunteers in that role. And this thing that we're at is Net Tuesday. So we are part of a global network of meetups for the nonprofit and technology community. Our goal is to bring those two groups together, smash them up in one room, and see if we can sort of build some relationships and new projects, get some new ideas flowing, and sort of build out some of the best practices with the nonprofit technology sphere. We are the second biggest of all the Net Squared events across the entire universe. Those jerks in San Francisco have been going on for 2 years longer, so they've got 2,000. But still, we're 1,400, and we're growing faster than them. So tell your friends, because I'm competitive. But of course, with that many members, it means we're also kind of a sponsor's dream, because we are the best collection of people who care about the nonprofit technology world. So if you work for an organization, or you yourself trying to reach an audience like this, smart, intelligent, really, really clever, dedicated, and passionate, talk to me, because we can find all kinds of interesting ways to make this happen, because I would love to up that food sponsorship into something wild and crazy, because I think you guys deserve better than this. And talk a little bit about who's new, and then I have to say we're totally volunteer run. So volunteers, I want you to stand up. Come on. You're taking the camera, you're doing photography. Come on in. Who else do I have? Perfect. So these are good people here. I've got an Amy, I've got a David, and I've got an Owen, and I've got a Linda, and I've got a Chad, and I've got an Aiden, and I'm surely missed someone. I'm going to be a jerk now. Who did I just miss? Oh, and at the front, I've got Siobhan, and they're all kind of amazing, and I love them. And please give it up for these people who actually make this possible. Now you're getting bored of me, so I'm just going to go quickly and say, one of our newest additions is Owen, working the camera right here in the back corner. He's going to make you all look and sound really good. And speaking of looking good, we've had Linda here for the last 4 months, I think, doing photography. And join the Facebook group. You're going to see all those photos. Tag yourself. Why not? So as I said, we're always looking for brand new volunteers. We're looking for people to come into all kinds of crazy capacity. We're looking for people to take us out into new cities that we may not be doing Net Tuesdays in. We're looking for sponsorships, social media support. We're looking for great event ideas. So if you think that you have something that you want to bring to this community, talk to me. I'll be around all day. And now I'm going to get out of the way and tell you instead that we're really lucky because we brought Mack here today. And Mack is kind of the local guru about mapping and data visualization. He's like, with his group Affinity Bridge, they built a whole bunch of like crazy interactive websites, which he's probably going to show off, because he should, because they're amazing. He's also going to give you some really practical hands-on things that you can go home with and say like, oh, what if I wanted to use some kind of magic trick and blow my coworkers' minds? He's going to show you how that's going to happen too. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mack, give it up!
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mack.
Hi. It's good to be here. My name is Mack. I think we covered that, but our company, our group is called Affinity Bridge, and we're just across the street from the Dominion building. We've been building websites and technology components, all sorts of stuff for nonprofits and government, universities, and First Nation groups for the last 7 years. We primarily use Drupal as a tool set, getting into JavaScript, mobile apps. And today I'm going to talk about visualizing data and making data relevant to people. And I'm not going to be diving deep into code examples. I know some people are a little worried, so I just want to get a feel for who here is a programmer. Who here has no idea about code or any sort of thing that drives the internet? Who's a communications person? And who works in the nonprofit space? Okay, cool. Design, UX people? Great. So I'm going to kind of talk a bit about how all of these things come together. First, I'm going to show you kind of what is visualization, how do we engage our audience and membership, and then talk about lots of different kinds of ways to do this. I'm going to give you a practical example of how you can build your own Core Plus map in Fusion Tables, which is a Google product. And then we're going to talk a little bit about cartograms, and then we'll talk a little bit about some other data visualization tools that are more programmatic. So, why are we visualizing data? Well, this comes from data-driven journalism, and you're seeing this a lot on TV lately, especially with the U.S. election. But really, we want to increase the value to the public. In the past, we've had spreadsheets, and then we were building graphs. But now we want things people can play with and touch and interact with. So, we're telling our story. We want to be able to visualize that. So, how are we visualizing data? The first step is to get some data to visualize. And if you've looked at any of the open data resources that are out there, it's been a big trend. Like the city of Vancouver is putting out open data, governments across all over are putting out open data. It's a bit of a race to see who can be more open. World Bank has an API. There's all sorts of ways to get data, but a big question that you come up with right away is, now that I have it. Oh, awesome.
There we go. Sorry about that. He's only going to sound better. Don't you worry.
So will you share your slides later on?
Yes. Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. So, these slides are going to get posted. Oh, wait. Shoot, I was going to record this. I should start that. Let's go. So I have some housekeeping. Make sure my computer doesn't go to sleep. And press the big red button. Okay, so we're going to get the data from open data sources, and then figuring out how to make a cross-section of that data meaningful can be a real challenge. So, I'm like, great, I've got all this census data or this, election data. How can I make that relevant and get it to a point? So the steps are to acquire the data from somewhere, parse it down into some sort of meaningful set, filter it to get down to the real core piece that you're interested in, and then do some sort of statistics or get some sort of meaning out of it, and then represent it. So, I think by the time you're in high school or university, you're probably like, oh, I can build a graph in Excel. This is awesome. And that's where you're getting to that represent layer. Now getting into this refining model. So how can I make it more clear? So maybe I'll strip the graph down, make the bars fatter, try and put some color on it and make it a little nicer to look at. But the coolest part, and the part that I'm most interested in, I think we're all most interested in as the state-of-the-art emerges here, is the interaction. So how can we allow end users to manipulate that data? So we want them to be able to either filter this data set or create other kinds of representations of the data without doing a whole bunch of homework. So this order and process is dictated, or is set out in the Visualizing Data book by Ben Fry. And Ben Fry kind of came up with this. And there's a book you can get from O'Reilly, which is a great book to check out. So, of course, Excel, Google Charts. These are two very simple, low-barrier options. So you put your columns in Excel, and you can see I just whipped up this little chart of the population of each province, and then those are the Google example charts, which is a little bit of JavaScript you download, and you can make your own pie charts and bar charts, and you can drive it out of Google spreadsheets as well. But there's a whole other set of ways that you can visualize this data. So this is a very cool place to check out those options. So this is called periodic table visualization. It's on visualliteracy.org. Moving left to right, you get a little example of everything that's in here. So pie charts, coordinates, check it out. It's interesting, and they have a whole bunch of articles about how you might visualize this data. Cute stuff. Lots of different kind of methods and ways, getting into infographics and all that. So I don't want to talk about that too long. Let's get into maps. So who's made a map before? And who's made a complex map? All right. Anyone frustrated with making maps? Awesome. All the same people who make complex maps. And I'm right there with you. Maps are awesome because they give a lot of context for the story that we're telling. So I'm going to show you two examples of storytelling maps that we've made recently for clients. One is for Vision Vancouver in the recent election. This was the Vision Delivers map, which showed all the things that Vision had done in their previous term in City Hall and about the kind of how they met their key platform. And the second is a map that tells the story of shale gas development in Fort Nelson, in the Fort Nelson territory for the Fort Nelson First Nation. The Vision map had to be a little bit interactive. It's not crazy. It's mostly, Google Maps. It was animated, so you could sit and watch it flip through each of these items. And they all belong to a place on the map. And we did build this in Drupal, so it was tied to a content management system. So campaign staff or anyone who wanted to update it could just add a new one, upload an image, put in a link if they wanted to. It goes off to wherever that story is. And it shows the four main areas. So you can see how you can click between, this is the creativity and jobs section, here's the green and city actions. It's great. It's probably 100 things, which is no problem for Google Maps. If you're going to put over 1,000 things on a Google Map, you're probably going to run into some slowdowns. But I'll talk about that later, and I'm not sure how relevant that is for you all. But the shale gas map, this was a little bit more of this was definitely R&D for us. I'll zoom out a bit, and I'll show you what this looks like without any of the other data on it. So this is really just the story data that goes on here. So the red squares are village sites or habitation sites for the First Nation, and the green are special place names. So here's a lake. Here's a place with Cocho Lake, which is a very kind of historical place, and here's a picture, and here's the pronunciation of an elder saying the place name in Dene. Here's a little write-up, and it kind of tells you about it. Now, in Fort Nelson, I don't know if you're aware, but there's crazy hydraulic fracking operations up there, oil and gas, natural gas extraction. So we took open data from the Oil and Gas Commission. So essentially all that is every permit that the Oil and Gas Commission issues to any oil company, any development company, they publish it, and so we took that data and we visualized it. Now we took it and put it into map tiles, and when the wireless catches up, you'll see a bit more clearly. But the challenge here is that there's a ton of data here. There's so much data that you can't just draw it on a map, because every time you draw it on the map, the browser is going to say, oh, thanks for all the data, and it's going to sit there and download that file every time. So what we did is we created map tiles. So just like when you change Google Maps from satellite mode to Google Maps mode, it switches the base tile. You can see how it does that. We're on the satellite base tile. We added a couple more tiles and we put them together into a composite layer. And then we stored metadata about the permit. So if we go into Cocho Lake here, and the circles are points where water is extracted, and then the little white lines that you'll see coming in here are called seismic lines, where they cut a 2-meter wide swath through the forest. We can see who owns the permit that goes with it. So when we mouse over this little water piece, you can see Encana Corporation is approved to do a Section 9, which is taking water out of the ground. Or when we look at these roads, these purple roads, we can see the access road, and the permit is here, and you see this one's actually canceled, so it's maybe not representative. But here's an approved pipeline right of way. So this kind of stuff, we have to put a whole bunch of data into these layers. And that's how we were able to build those maps. So the main point of the slide is, we're creating context for the story. It's cool they have some village sites, but it's more important to know that they're under heavy pressure from development in their territory. So like I was talking about, compositing, essentially like taking a stack of transparencies, set your base map. That might be a set of tiles that you generate, or we use Bing satellite tiles or Google satellite tiles. And then you can put other data on top. You can also draw your own if you are ambitious, but that's a whole other ball of wax. So you get all the contours of all the waterways and all the highways and mountain contours, and build your own layers that way. But accuracy varies. Lots and lots of data. So that was a fair bit of data. For another project for WorkSafe BC, we ended up mapping all of the logging roads and oil and gas access roads in the province. We did this in a very similar way. We took their 2 gigs of road data, and that's like 2 gigs of line strings in text, and we rendered that into tiles. And then we started taking data from industry. So when, Canfor owns pretty much half the logging roads on Vancouver Island, and when Canfor submitted their data with road safety information, then we imported that and made another layer which contained the road safety data. You can see here, that data that's in focus is one road, the Bamfield Road. So if you've ever gone to Bamfield, out near Galliano, this is the giant logging road, Bamfield Main Road, and it feels like a highway, but it's really an active logging road. And so there's road safety data on the Bamfield Road, and I'll show you that. So here's what this site looked like. Choose a region and go to one area. But the Bamfield Main Road, generally the road, 60 kilometers an hour, it's a 2-way road. Here's some metadata about the road. But what was really more fun was, all of these hazards are on this road. So, if we go to hydro crossing, don't drive your big tall truck under the hydro line and knock the hydro line down. Or, don't drive your heavy truck over the bridge. You can see here that, we have the layers of the forestry roads, which are the yellow, and then we've got the WorkSafe resource roads, which are these ones that have industry data. So a lot of the work to make that happen was to be able to load that data in a fast enough way that it was useful to the user, and also to be able to have the user have context, so they can come in and search for Bamfield and find all the roads that are related to Bamfield. You can see also there's some mouse over stuff that's in there, again, putting metadata into the tiles and then pulling that metadata out. So that's the kind of mapping work we've done. Now this is the homework part for all of you. I'm expecting, if you haven't made a lot of maps, you can make simple maps using Google Fusion Tables. Has anyone used Fusion Tables before? So it's pretty cool that you can do it through the web and it's free. You run into limits, but I'm going to give you an idea. So my plan, if my demo goes well, and I hope it does, is to make a map that looks like this. And this map is provincial boundaries from Canada Open Data, and then a corpus based on population. So you can see in this picture, BC is not as populated as Ontario for density. So I'm going to go to my trusty fusion tables, and I have preloaded these so you don't have to watch me upload a file. So here's some population data. So this set has the population in 2011 and the population in census 2006. And you can see it comes with this total column, which has some numbers in it. And there's some boundaries. Oh no, wrong set, never mind. Then I got a set of boundaries. So this is, you can see this KML column over here. This contains the geography for each province, like just the outline of that province. So what you do is you're going to want to do something called a merge. Now, since we have one with the boundaries and one with the numbers, I want to put those together and tie them together based on the name of the province. Now, this data set's a little tricky because the province name has English and French put together, but then there's another column which is called the province English name. So I'm going to merge on that. So I'm going to go into File. Oh, and if you don't know where to find this, and I didn't do a very good job of telling you, you go into your Google Docs, or Google Drive, as they're calling it now, and go Create, and go to More, and choose Fusion Table. And you'll get a dialog like this, which will say, do you want to upload a file? And if you've got the KML file, you can upload it. You can also search for files that are out there already. Mileage may vary on that. You've got to know what you're looking for, but that's a totally decent way to do it. So after I've uploaded these files, I have them sitting here. Now I'm going to go File, and I will merge this. And say, what can I merge with? Well, that's the populations table. I guess I'll merge it with the boundaries. And I'll hit Next, and it's going to say, how do you want me to join these together? And I'll say, well, province name and this one, and that province English name, and these look pretty similar, so I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to hit Go, and then there's every column from both tables is here. Don't really care about gender data in my map, so I'll turn those off. And I don't need the geocode in there. I will keep for the notes. And I don't really need the French name, so I'll turn those off too. And you can be pretty, it doesn't really matter. So this has been created. I'm going to go to it creates a new third table, which is the merge of those two. And I'm going to check out my rows. So I've got my rows in here, and it looks like I've got my geometry in my geometry column, and I got my total, which is my population. And then the characteristic, see, I've got my population for 2011 and 2006. So if I make a map of this now, it's going to be a total of both of those. So I'm going to filter this, and I'm going to say, filter by characteristic. And I'm going to say, look, it figured out what my options were there. Because I'm only going to filter by the 2011. I'm going to create a new map. That's going to visually make me a map and copy those filters. I hope. There it comes. Speed internet. Okay, but that's great. But they're all red, so I haven't really got my coloring down, right? So I can go into this map, and I'm going to look at the map styles here. There's a couple things you can change. You were making a marker map, so say you had a bunch of data that was like a bunch of points or addresses, it'll geocode all your addresses for you and put dots on a map where your addresses are. Great for something like a donor database, you want to see where your donors are. But in our case, we're using polygon, so I'm going to go to fill color, and I'm going to go all the way over here to gradient, because that's what I'm after. And I'm like, yeah, I want to show a gradient. And it checks for all the columns that I have with numbers in it. So it's got a province UID, which I don't need, and a total, which is that population total. So it's pre-decided what ranges are available. I'm going to say use this range, and it's going to go from the low range to the high range, and I can go to get artsy, and I'm not a very kind of color-centric guy, so I'm going to avoid this. You could set your own gradient here. It's chosen a gradient for me, which looks great, so I'm going to say, okay, yeah, the low ones will be light green, and the heavy ones will be dark green. And I'll hit save there. going to recolor our map, which looks very similar to my slide. Now it can become clickable, and whatever fields I've set in the merge table appear as overlays here. Now you're like, oh, that's great. Now what can I do with this map? You can publish this map, and you can embed it places. You can probably save it out to Google Earth, put it on your website, all kinds of stuff like that. So there's a publish option here. I could, very much like saving a Google document, which is the great thing about using Google to do this. You're probably familiar with it already, and I could send a link to this to someone, or go get the HTML and I have a web page or an embeddable. So that's what Fusion Tables is all about. Now, Fusion Tables is cool, but it'd be a lot cooler. It's cool for lots of things. It's a great place to have shared distributed data management. So say we all decided we were going to have a database of great sushi restaurants in Vancouver. We didn't want to rely on Yelp or anything like that. We could share a table, and every time you had a new one, put a new line in. Yeah?
You want to wait for questions? Or?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering with the files that you mentioned. I don't remember what it was, but you know how sometimes you can get data that's like XML or CSV or
right.
Like, does it have to be the specific file type?
Google Fusion Tables is pretty forgiving. It'll take the CSV and parse it. I don't know how much it will parse XML, and it'll take Google Earth like KML files raw, and I think it might also take shapefiles, but I'm not sure.
It doesn't take shapefiles directly, but
okay.
You actually gave me a link to find it.
Aha. Great. So this is a cool thing. There is a data source out there which is a list of U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan over the last couple of years. And the guys from Mapbox, people know Mapbox or these guys make a very cool, build your own map tiles application. They have a great blog post which I've linked here, and I'll show you this demo. They're using Fusion Tables as the data source, and then visualizing this using Mapbox as the display layer. So rather than having the points on the map or choropleth, like whatever is in Fusion Tables, they're just using that as the database, and they're pulling this out. So this creates an animated walkthrough of drone strikes. And you see the data here, so it's like total deaths in that strike, and the count goes up. It's very dramatic. And any one of these, you can click and see metadata on it. So here's the data for this marker, and it plays through. So they've got a great kind of, if you're a programmer and you're interested in how to access and visualize on the Mapbox stack, you can use that as a guide. And I've used your own data source or use Fusion Tables as an option. This is part of, all this data comes from a website called livingunderdrones.org, very interesting site as well. And here's the blog post about how to do this. And something super cool as a visualization tool is a JavaScript-based timeline. Have people used timelines before? I mean, you've probably seen them, but I don't know if you've created one. This is another pretty easy thing for you to build. So this is the same data again. And with headlines, it kind of shows you, you can scroll through the bottom. So there's a bunch of different JavaScript timeline libraries. You can choose one and use that. And just to wrap up on Fusion Tables, Fusion Tables can also handle larger data sets, so like the drone set or like this. So this is a data set. It's open data again from the New Zealand government called GeoNet. So this is data about the earthquake in Christchurch in 2010. I'll show you what this looks like in the larger. So, we're looking at 1,000 rows of data here. That's exactly why we want to put it on a map. It's been imported from that source. which is geonet.nz, or the New Zealand section of it. And then, here, Fusion Tables dutifully makes me a map. And this is cool. I can see the red, which is buried in here, which is often a problem in visualizing large sets of data, is the red is one that's got a high magnitude, so that's over 5, for example. And the green is a small magnitude, and the yellow would be a medium. This is the kind of data set, I'm going to use this as an example when I get into programmatic visualization stuff, that you want to see something a little juicier, and something that you can interact with more and it's more representative. Any questions on that stuff?
I was just wondering with your fusion tables, can you do things like lines and roads?
Yes, you can. Yeah, because you can put polygons in there and it'll take a line string as well.
So, would you still want to do when you introduce moving files in that?
I wouldn't want to do that in Fusion Tables.
Well, I mean, are there times when you can't use fusion tables?
I might not be the right person to answer that because it's not my first choice. Usually I would put that data into some sort of spatial storage, like PostSQL or something. It's a great way to visualize it. I would think if you want to look at it, open it in Google Earth and see what it looks like, and put it into Fusion Tables if you want to join that with something. Because really that's what Fusion Tables, the fusion part, is the joining of non-spatial data with spatial data is one of the great things. And it does, non-spatial data to non-spatial data as well. If you had 2 CSV files and you wanted to find out some correlation statistics on that, you could. I mean, it will draw all kinds of graphs, and this data set's a little bit messy. But you can see here's some graphs, and it kind of munched the dates. So these dates are all Jan 1st. But, you can start to pull charts out of it as well. So that's another good reason to use Fusion Tables.
Just to clarify, Google has something called Google Visualization API. So are Fusion Tables more for like static data from spreadsheets and things like that?
I think so. I don't know much about their visualization API. I looked at it a little bit in preparing for this presentation, but I haven't tried it.
Okay, so what would you use if you wanted to get real-time data from Government of Canada or some of those open APIs? You want to pull them every?
Yeah, you can pull them every. It depends how real time you want it to be, I guess.
Can you use Google Fusion Tables? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and that's what the drone stuff did in that example.
Oh.
Here, this is using Fusion Tables as the data source and visualizing it elsewhere, so it's a richer visualization. But I don't see why you couldn't have, pulling a data source in that's visualized in Fusion Tables.
And Mapbox is on top of the Google Visualization API?
Kind of over here. Kind of like Mapbox saying, hey, Fusion Tables, what data do you have? And doing a call to get that. And pulling it over. Yeah. So I'm going to quickly talk about cartograms, because this is pretty interesting if you're in statistics or like JavaScript. Pretty much, cartogram is a map where you're using statistical information to influence the way that the map is drawn. So to show it in a diagrammic map. You've seen these before. I'll show you a couple examples. This is 3 sets of data. The green is the provincial boundary. The blue is the population, and the red is the seats in Parliament. And they're all pretty as they. So this one is just the scaling by population. Now this is called a contiguous cartogram, which means that all the pieces, the borders between the provinces, all stick together. And you can see the north, even relative to its size, is very underpopulated. And Ontario, big, yeah. And we can also show this as a non-contiguous cartogram, which means that they're not connected, and these ones overlap. You can also create them so that they don't overlap at all, and pieces just blow apart like puzzle pieces on the table. And you're saying to yourself, well, that's cool, but what am I going to use that for? And you know, you might use it to do this kind of data visualization. You might have some click-through behavior on these that goes somewhere. But what it's been used most effectively for is showing election results. I think we got beat over the head with these, or I did, because this is what I was looking for during the U.S. election. You know, if you look at the one on the left, you know, it looks like the Republicans won because there's more red than blue there. Now, if we scale the votes by state, then the blue narrowly surpasses the red. But what this guy Mark Newman from University of Michigan has done is, you know, created this one, which is he calls the purple. And so this shows, you know, it's really blue in San Francisco, but you know, there's a lot of purple shading here. So it shows, you know, kind of the balance of the vote across the results. So this is linked in the presentation as well. Very interesting if you want to read more. He also does crazy stuff like this, and just looks really wild, abstract. Interesting stuff. And then here's another great example of a cartogram. So who has the oil reserves? Saudi Arabia, huge. Canada, not so huge. But then there's two dimensions here. It's not just size. There's also this little key, which I'm sorry, this images are kind of small, but this is oil use. So orange, really high use. Size, not so big. So this kind of shows two dimensions of this coin, or two sides of the coin, which are, you know, they have high use and low reserves versus, you know, getting into the EU, very small, no reserves, dependent on foreign oil, and, you know, into the Middle East where there's a ton of reserves. So this kind of stuff is very interesting, and using this there's like carto.js, this plugin for d3.js, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is a way to now, which is where we you know, drew these first couple diagrams. This is now a way where anybody can start drawing these diagrams. I didn't talk about this because it was kind of out of order, but it's called an ecumen. This is another way to show population. So if it's in the populated area, it shows as brown. You can really see for all of Ontario and Quebec being larger because they have more population. It's all within, you know, 50 miles of the border. So this is an interesting thing from Stats Canada. Now I'm going to talk about making our visualization interactive. So, you know, I've made these static cartograms and built stuff in Fusion tables. Two great frameworks to look at if you're going to choose a framework to build visualization in. One's called D3, which stands for Data-Driven Documents. The other is Raphael. Both of these are libraries that draw something called an SVG, which is a way to draw images. There's a charting component to both of these, so if you want to make a bar chart, you can pull the bar chart library and, you know, plug your stuff straight into that. But you can draw all kinds of stuff. You draw a picture if you want. You've got the map skills, which I don't. So using D3, we can start to do data analysis on all kinds of stuff. This is something that someone else has made. And this is called a hex bin. And a hex bin is pretty much just like a scatter plot if you want to see where there's high density and low density. And in this example, this is Walmart locations in the U.S. I'll close this one. So here's the live version of this. So I mouse over this one, and I can see this square. And this hex is about 120 kilometers tall. And you can really see that it follows population density, like not a lot of Walmart in Nebraska. But kind of a neat way to get a feel for how dense it is. Because traditionally, you would have seen this on a heat map, where, you know, they cover the whole map in a color, and the color is dark in one place and it's light in the other, but it doesn't give you a sense of density. It doesn't give you a bottom and top end on the bin. So So, or on that grouping. So this is a way to kind of make it a little more rational when you're looking at it. So we started playing around with this and made a map of the locations of graffiti in Vancouver. And you'll see we're standing right in the worst of it here. Best of it, depending on how you feel about it. This map is, again, built on this D3 library. As you zoom out, it's gonna. So this is more interactive than some options because you can zoom in and out of the map. You can see we used a cool map background top. This is from a company called Stamen, who you should totally check out. They make a lot of really neat base tiles, and this one's called watercolor, not surprisingly, but I thought it was kind of fitting for the graffiti stuff. So this data, of course, comes from City of Vancouver, and our lovely city open data representatives are constantly publishing stuff. And this set, you can get this downloaded as a KML file and open it in Google Earth, and your computer grinds to a halt as it tries to rationalize all these points. And then you can look at all where all that stuff is. You can get like building footprints and crime and water fountain locations. There's all sorts of stuff on here. Again, these will be linked off the slides here. What's really interesting about this is, again, it's really just getting to let's show the trend and let's show kind of an overview of what's where. So as you zoom out, the blocks get a little inaccurate because we're so far out. They just keep summing up what's beside them. But at a reasonable zoom level, you can see that. Yeah. So back to the earthquake data. This is going to be put through that same data from fusion tables that I showed you earlier. We're going to put it on a map. And this is a simple mapping library called Leaflet. Both of these are Leaflet maps. Here's the hex bin. Again, same thing. You see the magnitude. This is really just a count of earthquakes in these areas. And so that's okay. And really all this is a scatter plot, like I mentioned. It just shows here's where this thing's happening. We can also graph this pretty simply. We've got control over it this way. We can also put this stuff on a graph. The graph that looks like this, I can display it by magnitude. So, you see there are only a couple really big earthquakes. And then I can switch it by depth to see how many kilometers deep they were. I'm not sure what the phase aspect is of the data, but that was an option. So once we had this data and were able to manipulate it in code, it was easy to build these different pieces. So we want to get more out of our map. So rather than show just where these earthquakes happen, I want to start showing things like how intense was the earthquake. And you can see the larger circles here are higher magnitude. So this one was the very biggest one, 7.1 magnitude. And this is also colored by depth. So if they're darker purple, they're deeper. And the lighter scale kind of goes up as you see this. So this gives a nice zoomable, controllable visualization for people to look at. But the coolest thing we could do would be to give the user even more control. And we'll add a timeline. So we want to combine the graph, the points, and the intensity. So I'm going to draw a timeline. So I can say that's 2 days worth. Oh no, sorry, that's 4 days. Let's just go 2 days worth. And then I can grab that and drag it across the map. So that's going to give us kind of a moving history of what happened during those earthquakes and aftershocks. You can see that the intensity was lower after the initial, but there were aftershocks for days and days through that month. We can grab the slider bars and widen this out. See everything. And this is really getting to the point where we're saying to the user, drive it however you want. All this code is available right here on these pages that are linked. So it's an easy start for anyone who wants to check it out. It's pretty much defining where our data comes from, where our background layer comes from, and how you want the stuff to draw. And there's really not much here. Like for this being the most complex example, that's it. So, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff to be done in terms of visualization. There's a lot of cool maps to make, and I'm interested to hear how you all get on with it. And I'm totally happy to talk to anyone about any of their projects. So that's pretty much what I had to show today. So Hugh Simpson here is going to talk about ethics and open data and some of the things that he's encountered on his recent project. So let's turn the floor over to you.
You! Woo! You!
Oh wait.
Oh yes. I was a little shocked to hear him say that he's not a color-centric person, because check out this shirt. Thank you. Okay, hello. All right, yeah, so we're going to call this ethics and open data, which is perhaps not totally appropriate because it's more like kind of sort of ethics and not really about just strictly open data, but we'll get into it anyway. I don't have slides, just a few links I want to share you. This is actually going to be fairly brief. So to begin, why would you care about ethics? There's a couple of reasons. The first is sort of the obvious one, that if you're at this event, if you exist in the nonprofit world, then chances are you care about doing the right thing for the intrinsic value. The other is that over the long term, if you're trying to build a brand, having that brand associated with integrity and civic-mindedness is important, and those things do accrete. So you want to do the right thing for both sides. I'm going to illustrate questions around ethics, or maybe choices is a better word, with data using a couple of quick stories, specific maps. The first is one that you may have heard of recently, and the other is one that I worked on. So, that's my first time using one of these cool mice. So perhaps you heard about this map. Shortly after the Newtown massacre, there was a regional newspaper in close to Connecticut, perhaps in it, that wanted to talk about gun permits and how much information was available on gun permits. And gun permits are actually an open data source in that area. So they got the permit data, and using the addresses, they mapped out every address at which there was a gun permit. Now, as you can perhaps imagine, people didn't take that totally lying down. There was a lot of people who were quite upset. It was certainly an interesting exercise. Now, there was a couple of arguments to be made. One was, this is open data. A newspaper publishing open data is nothing new, right? They publish marriage licenses, they publish death notices, et cetera, et cetera. But then there's something about data that's just sitting there passively ready for somebody to come and look at it, versus data where a journalistic organization has put it up in public view, maybe put it on a map. And this is the thing about maps, is that they're very powerful things. They take data which may be static, which may be passive, and make it suddenly more immediate and bring people's attention to it. And so that's why we start thinking about choices. So there's two kinds of choices that I think about when I think about data on maps. The first is the choices that people make to let me have data or not. And maybe I should take a step back and say that what I do is I'm kind of an informatics consultant, geography guy, largely for nonprofits and environmental groups. I've also worked somewhat in government, so I've been on both sides of this data question: do we release, do we not? And then there's a choice that we make. Okay, once we've got the data, once somebody else has chosen to give it to us, do we release it? Why do we release it? And how do we release it? So in this case, I mean, like, this was sort of obvious, right? And I think most of the people in this room, probably when they're thinking about data, they're thinking, yeah, get it out there. I mean, it's just sort of like, if it's public data, if there's a reason it's been brought together, if it's publicly funded, then by all means, let's get it out there and get it used. And that's how I feel about it most of the time. And then we think, but obviously there's cases where that's not a good idea, and that's going to be obvious. And this is perhaps one of those times when it was just kind of obvious that it wasn't necessarily a good idea to do this. A lot of gun owners became very angry. They threatened reporters. They felt their privacy was invaded. They said, why are you putting my address on a map that somebody can search? This is provocative, it's divisive. And tactically speaking, it's possible that if the goal of this map was to advance gun control, they may have actually made their side look kind of bullying and inappropriate, and it may not have been a tactical win for them. But other times, the question is much less clear. And that's to state that most of the time, if you're making a map as a nonprofit, as a business, it's not going to be so obvious what's right and what's wrong. Most of the time, the answer is yes, map it, right? Maps are cool, go for it. But sometimes, even when it seems like it's innocuous, it isn't necessarily so. And so that brings me to my next map. This is something that I worked on in association with a group called the Tyee Solutions Society. And they're a journalism nonprofit that works along with the Tyee, which is an awesome journalism for-profit. And what we wanted to do was take a whole bunch of data we were aware existed on where carbon sinks and sources are in the province. So anything that emits carbon or which withdraws carbon from the atmosphere and sequesters it. We wanted to look at, for all the data we could get our hands on, for all of BC, where is all this stuff? How does it add up? How does it subtract? And what's the balance? So we made this map, which is based on kind of 7 key data sets, covers the whole province. It is built, incidentally, using fusion tables, although it's not my favorite, but it comes at that wonderful price point of free. There's something magic about that free price point, right? So often you end up using fusion tables, and fusion tables can handle a lot of data very quickly. So what we've got is 5 different kind of combined data sources over here, and as you scan around on the map, it adds up the carbon sinks and the carbon sources and comes up with a little total here for the area you're looking at, and you can turn these different layers on and off, and it will add it up differently. So I can see, for instance, if I'm just interested in industrial facilities, what's the total for this region up around Port St. John? We've got 2 million tons of carbon equivalent per year being emitted. So that seems like pretty innocuous, and we mostly built this using open data. There are, if you're going out looking for data, there's kind of different gradients of what is truly open. As a data geek, I assume that everyone is going to have an open data portal, and if data is worth mapping, it's already on some list where I can just go to a website and grab it and download it and I'll have it. In practice, that's not actually the case. There's a lot of kind of quasi-open data that's out there. And I don't like to get any further into the investigative reporting sphere than Googling really hard. But it was interesting working with journalists to see how they went to work on this question. And it's been something that I've tried to emulate since when I'm doing a mapping project. They got on the phone. I worked with Chris Pollan, who's an awesome investigative reporter. He was in the inbox of these government agencies, on the daily, saying, so, we hear that you've got this data. And you would think it's obvious, well, either it's releasable or it's not. But it turned out that it's releasable if you pester them enough in some cases. So the first lesson is pester government officials. They will eventually perhaps give you data. And so we got data for these industrial facilities. Is open data. It's something. It's a government project that for every facility that releases more than 10,000 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, it has to show up in this data set. But we were able to get it. Apparently, that field is emitting over 10,000 tons of carbon per year. We were able to get it a little bit in advance. That's through pestering. Some of these other data sources, yeah, they were free. One of the one that I want to especially talk about, and the one that actually ended up being contentious for us, is forests, which seems like it might be the most innocuous of all. So if we zoom all the way out here and turn on forests and all these other things, you will see that, whoops, we're not zoomed all the way out here. Where are we? We're lost in the ocean.
There's the Pacific.
Okay, it turns out the Pacific has no carbon. So the big number at the bottom here, this total suggests that BC on the whole sequesters 20 million tons of CO2 equivalent per year, which seems like a good deal for us, right? And that's despite all these other pink things, all these other highways, all these other facilities, and the reason being these forests. Now, to get that data, to get that forest data, which pushes us over, we talked to the government. And the first thing the government told us was, well, actually, BC is currently a net emitter of carbon. Since wildfire on the coast, since pine beetle in the interior, since drought conditions, there's actually more carbon being emitted from BC's forests than there are being subtracted. And we said, great, awesome, can we have that data that shows that? And they said, well, and we said, what? We said, well, if we give you the data and we break it up at the provincial border, then you'll be able to figure out what the carbon output of the forest in Alberta is. And that's private. And they wouldn't even use the word Alberta. They said adjacent provinces. So we went looking for other data, and we talked to some really awesome people at Natural Resources Canada who are doing really awesome work on this question of forest emissions. And we said, can you give us data that's broken down at least a little bit? Not just like a single total for the whole province, because that's boring to put on a map, like one color, but break it up a little bit by zone. And they said, okay, what they were willing to release to us was, we can give it to you by ecoregion, which are these giant zones. You can see there's one ecoregion coming down the coast here, and then there's actually two ecoregions. You can't really see it in the interior here. The Taiga Plain, maybe there's three, and the Montane Cordillera. But we can only give it to you from the time we started working on this, which was 2000 through 2008. And we said, great, we'll use that. So we put it on our map. It's green in the sense that it's sequestering carbon. And then we started sharing this thing around with partners. We sent it off to various environmental groups. And we said, what do you think of this? Do you have any responses? And they kind of said, well, that's wrong. The province is, as a whole, it's actually emitting carbon, and you're showing it as sequestering carbon. And we said, yeah, but this is the data set that we have, right? This is the best that we can do. And it's true, averaged over like 2000 through 2008, or 2000 through 2010, it was sequestering. Maybe it's not just in 2010. So we said, okay, we'll write that up in our stories, and we'll put right here. You can click on these things and find out what our data sources were and what our assumptions were. And then we wrote not one but 4 different stories in here, in which we talked about the lessons we learned and explained to people, don't believe it. There's like text right in there that says, this data is wrong, this is really contentious, this is the best we could do, here's the fights that we had, and then we published it. And people kind of freaked out. And some people freaked out in a bad way and said, we told you, you're misrepresenting the carbon scenario in BC. And we said, yeah, but look at these great stories. And then other people said, for instance, we were kind of excited when the Atlantic picked up this story and said, there's this cool map about BC, and what's really great about BC is that, I won't find the exact quote, they actually embedded our map, it made me feel very good. BC has these awesome forests, and that's why BC is a net sequesterer, and so let's keep our forests, because forests are always good for carbon. And the conclusion we came to, which we probably should have realized in the beginning, is it doesn't, to a certain extent, matter what you write around the map, or even what you put in those pop-ups that are on the map. When you put a map in front of people that has color, the story they see is the map and the color. And that speaks to the power of the maps, right? I mean, people are immediately affected by maps, but it also speaks to some of the danger. And since then I've wondered, was that the right thing to do? Should we not have put that? Should we just left most of the province blank? I mean, we would have looked kind of like fools, but it would have been perhaps more accurate. Or was it good to have this discussion? Did we get people engaged in the idea? I don't know what the answer is. I've come to think maybe we shouldn't have published that data, even though we spent so much time talking about it.
That's my vote.
Yep. I don't blame you.
Your answer, if you're a journalist, you just snap answer. Here's a journalist who answers and reads the whole thing off.
Right. Yep. And so coming back to this, so after the publishing of this, the gun violence, or rather I shouldn't say gun violence, the gun permit holders, none of whom we can presume are violent, the locations of their residences, there was a really good and kind of robust discussion around in the journalistic community, which don't have the same norms or goals necessarily as nonprofits and businesses, but which share some of them with a lot of the folks in this room, about So, when do we publish open data? And I won't go through all of this. That summarizes some of it very nicely, but if you have a chance, I would recommend reading this article. If you're thinking about data and you're a little bit worried about it, Pointer article, Google Pointer journalism, data, whatever, and ask the question, how do you know if you're doing it right? And there's a good summary here of why are you publishing this? Is it just a data dump? Is it a computer programming stunt? If it is, that's great, but don't necessarily put it in public view. What do you expect to gain from it? How can you? Who could be harmed if you do publish it? What are the reasons not to publish it? Is it accurate? You often want to hide behind this idea of, well, the data was given to me by the city, or the data was given to me by the best possible authority. Okay, but if you're publishing that, if you're standing behind it with your organization, unless you find a better way than we did to indicate that we don't necessarily believe this data, your name is going to be tied to that data, and you want it to be credible. So make sure it's accurate, even if it is from an authoritative source. And then, if you're going to publish it, how are you going to publish it? You have to put all the details in. Can you summarize? Can you remove personal information? Can you use hex bins instead of points? And if you can answer all those questions, which 90% of the time, the answer is, yes, no, and we're doing it fine. Make the map, but be sure that that you have these things in mind when you're making those decisions. And that's kind of a gloomy perspective, and I'm sorry for being the gloom guy. But because I make maps all the time and I think they're awesome, so for me it's kind of obvious that you should make maps. It's just occasionally a good idea to step back and think about this stuff a little bit. And that's my story. I don't know if there's any questions about that, or.
I was just wondering, it seems like there's a need for some kind of standard that your map could have a gold star if it's really good data, or maybe a bronze star if it's just kind of okay data. Have you ever heard of any kind of standard like that?
I haven't. It's a really interesting idea. The thing about data is that it's so subjective. Who would assign that? You can imagine sort of having competing credibility boards, so how you have the Forest Stewardship Council versus the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, and who wins, and maybe
you try to get a star according to how good they are, assessing credibility.
Right. So we get the map assessor credibility star, which is cool if you're really good at assessing credibility. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I'd be curious to know what institutions would have the incentives to move forward with it, and then I'd be a little afraid of getting the bronze star.
I guess you could also just assign yourself a star.
Right.
Give me a bronze star.
I'm going to go home and stick a star on that map.
But you can do that for a map where you've made it and you're not confident.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So,
even
even more
the gold
clear
map
ways
of mine, it's the bronze map of mine.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess then people would have to know what you meant by putting a gold star versus a bronze star on it. In a sense, we thought we were doing that.
One thing you're discussing maps is you're treating them as dynamic but static. So you could take either one of your situations. Now that they're there, if they were streaming new data, it's a whole different story. So you've got your gun thing, and everybody's all upset because all of a sudden, somebody's looking up my skirt, and then, but what happens if tomorrow we just have 3 new points, where you play with your little JavaScript and you can go, how many guns this week?
That's right.
It's a whole different story. I'm not saying it necessarily makes people really want to see that, but it'd be a great deterrent to go, gee, I'm going to be the gun of the week. At noon, we bought 3 guns. But it changes the whole story. And it's the same thing with the downside to your story of the forestry, because if it could be updated as you stream forward, then instead it's got some substance to it. It's a whole different story.
Yeah, like a 5-year lag on the data you're showing to change the story.
Right, yeah. And we would like to go that route, only again, we fought so hard to get that data at all that they're not willing to update it for more recent data.
Just put their name on your chart. They said this.
Yeah, we did.
So, questions in general? Actually, before that, I'd just like to say Tom here in the green sweater, he built all that stuff that I showed you, and it's pretty awesome. So yeah, questions, discussion. Anyone?
So you recorded the whole screen thing, right? So at some point I'm kind of like, okay, I'm lost.
Yeah.
I can watch you on YouTube a couple times.
Yeah.
Play it at half speed.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So what's it cost to walk into Affinity and get something like that built?
What do you want?
Cheap.
Cheap and awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a lot cheaper now that we did it for this talk.
So I played with some good stuff. How hard is it to get the E3 stuff working?
If you're already a JavaScript programmer and you can follow an example, you probably won't have that hard of a time, really. I mean, it's a lot of the stuff. There's a very prolific guy who made that 512 paths to the White House thing and wrote E3 and wrote the cartogram thing named Microsoft Postdoc. And he has a plugin for pretty much any kind of graph you could ever want to make. And I say he and the community, but really it seems like his stuff is maybe 70 or 80% of what's in there. Variations on a theme. Once you figure out how to bind the data, so the good thing about these frameworks is you're essentially just binding the data into DOM objects, so you can build them into web pages. Doesn't work in IE6. So you know. But yeah, you can start to manipulate it in a lot of different ways.
Do you look at tools like Crystal Reports or Tableau or anything like that?
Yeah, I like that. Crystal Reports or whatever I'm not sure what it's called now. Crystal is a derivative tool of Crystal Reports that built some sort of flash modeling stuff. That someone showed me some work they'd done in it and it looked pretty cool and very similar. Like, you know, adjust the graph, or turn off and on options, and the map changes and the graph changes. I think there are kind of variations on a theme. I think the thing that makes this more doable is knowing what outcome you're trying to get. It's a little different than making a Google chart or a Excel chart where you're like, oh, I've got this data, I'm going to make a line graph. No pie chart, no bar chart. You don't really know kind of what your end destination is. If you can figure out where you're trying to go, it's a lot easier to work backwards. But how's that for you guys? Anyone else? Well, I'll say thanks for having me.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. So let me just go fire up the little crazy machine. Plug. Present. So basically, we're almost at the end, which means you guys get to go back to your loved ones and, like, I don't know, do something exciting with your evening. Or cram for whatever you have to do tomorrow, which is another way, of course, some of us live our lives. So let me just, like, promote the future, because the future is exciting. So we're going to be right here in, I guess, 1 month exactly, and we're going to talk a little bit about IT project management, especially for the nonprofit sector. I think many of us have started onto a project and quickly realized that we were in over our heads and no one actually agrees on what we're actually trying to do, and we're not even sure who's actually in charge or what the budget is. These things get out of control really quickly, and we're going to bring in people from the project management volunteers team, and they really go through some of the standard time-tested processes for making sure that you don't start drowning. And they're also going to show you some cool examples. The biggest one is going to be the work they did as volunteers with the 311 call service, which is like sort of, services available to you in the community for WAG. So it should be super interesting, and these people are also available to volunteer within your organization. So if you think you might be coming in on a big project soon and might benefit by having a stable hand to just guide you through shaping the project. You still got to do the work, but they're going to help it make you less crazy. These are people to talk to. And then actually, right after that, we are going to come into April, and Chad is going to do a storytelling-focused event. So Chad's going to tell you all about that. I'm going to put him on the spot.
So I'm actually going to do very little of it. I'm going to get people that know what they're doing to come and talk about it. So we have 3 people lined up right now. One is Vanessa Chase, who writes a blog, Philanthropy for All, and has some storytelling resources to help you convey your story. One is Jason Toll, who works with SFU, but at night he's involved in a cult called DS106, which is actually a free, open digital storytelling course that anyone can take. It's a university level course run out of Massachusetts. And they do all these cool media mashup stuff. And then number 3 is Philip, I can't pronounce his last name.
Wow.
And he runs a local communications company, so he's going to talk about some best practices and projects he's done. So Chan's going to talk about things you can do, tools that are out there, and kind of showcase some cool things to inspire you to tell your story without just a long Word document, but in a kind of cool and other visual ways, such as this.
And then, because we're sassy, I think by mid-month, we're going to get together mid-April, and we're actually going to do a hands-on workshop-y thing. So we're going to come here, we're going to break out our laptops, and we're going to spend an afternoon going through 3 different digital storytelling tool sets. So we're probably going to play with Mozilla's Popcorn Maker, which allows you to make like pop-up video style productions. So if you've ever watched much music and you can put snarky things on top of videos, we're going to show you how to do that. Basically how to remix video and add the snark in. Or potentially tell your story. Free, because it's a miracle. And then I'm going to show you a couple other tools which are going to allow you to take, like, say about 20 photos. And I actually wanted to make it like into a hot, sexy video slideshow where everything's moving around and things are looking cool. Again, another free tool you guys can play with. And I think we may also play with Storify, which is another way for you to take the digital ephemera, all the many things we create in social media land, and start making sense of it. So how do we bring that stuff together to tell a story and do something cool with it? I'm looking for ideas. I'm looking for people who may have a skill set in some kind of digital storytelling tool who want to share it with us and lead us for, say, 40 minutes on doing a bit of a workshop. So yeah, it'll probably be here. It might be like a Saturday morning. We'll bring 30 of us together. It'll be intimate. It'll be fun. And of course, as I talked about, we are ambitious. So, Abbotsford, if you live somewhere out in the valley, I don't even know where Abbotsford is, but I'm going to find out in 2 weeks. We are going to go and hang out with like the new sister group for Net Tuesday. So, we've got Net Squared, Fraser Valley. They've claimed it all. And so February 19th, we're going to do Google and Web Analytics. And then April, we're going to do basically something which we did here in Vancouver a couple months ago, focus on crowdfunding. And they're going to go and talk about how do you use Kickstarter kinds of tool sets to like raise money for your projects and do wicked things in this world. And of course, Surrey, another place I'm not that familiar with, but I hear it's big and the kids are there. So we're bringing in 2 big rock stars. You've got Darren Barefoot and Miss 604, and they're going to come in and talk a little bit about some of their projects. Darren is going to talk about, I don't know, something about social media, I'm sure. And Miss 604 is actually busy organizing right now the Twestival Global Fundraising Campaign. So she's going to actually talk about how she used Twitter in this case to build a fundraising campaign, and then build a community around that. That's all I got for you. Now it's time for you to show up. So I would like you to come, line up right there out front, and you are going to get 30 seconds. I'm actually going to time you because I'm a jerk like that. And if you are doing something interesting in the next couple months and want to tell people about it, come here, show off. Are you hiring someone? Are you maybe employed or employable and looking for someone to hire you because you're wicked awesome? Maybe this is the time for you to like show off and tell people about what you're all about. So here you go. Tell us a little bit. This is Jared. He's from Peace Geeks. He did cool things. Jared.
Hi, I'm Jared. I'm from Peace Geeks. That's our logo, isn't it snazzy? We sit in the back at the Hive, and we do a lot of stuff with mapping. So Peace Geeks is for promoting peace, accountability, and human rights in developing and conflict-affected areas. by partnering with nonprofits on the ground in those areas that have a gap in technology and communications capacity. So we build remote teams, mostly here in Vancouver, because that's where we are. It doesn't really matter. So if you have some skills, you can work on those projects. We are hiring a full-time person to do a mapping project to sort of combine Drupal with a nice Swiss Army tool of mapping. And Mack is helping sort of advise on that. So if you like what you saw tonight, you need a job, we're hiring.
Cool, cool. So who else is doing wicked awesome things? Like, you don't need to be shy. Come. Tell us. Introduce yourself, say who you are, then tell us about the wicked things you're doing.
Hi, I'm Dan Pollock with the BC NDP. We're hiring a lot of people. We need at least 2 or 3 Drupal developers, City CRM developer, people who do visualizations and analytics, and a statistician. So we have an election to win, and I'm hoping some people here either know people who are looking for wonderful, exciting work. It pays pretty good. It's a lot of work. It'll be exciting and fun, and you can have a big part in hopefully taking back the government. Most of the contracts, some of them will continue after the election. Most of it is work that starts very soon and runs until approximately, May 14th, plus the bank vacation time you're going to have, when you won't actually have to work, but we'll still pay you. And the other thing is, right now I'm working in Vancouver, but I'm actually from Victoria, and with help from Eli, we're starting with up in Victoria after the election, because I don't have any time before then. So if you know people in Victoria, or you occasionally go to Victoria, or you want to present in Victoria, or you just want to come over and see what we're doing there, grab me before you go. We're looking for people to attend, people to speak. If you have friends there who do related work, let us know. Thank you very much. And especially if you want to work for the BC NDP, we really want to hire lots of great people like all of you. So, thanks.
Very good, thank you. Who are you? What do you want to tell us about?
Okay, I'm Siobhan, and I work at BCIT in their nonprofit and fundraising program. We've got a nonprofit mingler on Thursday. That's this Thursday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's free. You just show up at the Joy Restaurant on Burrard Street at Robson. It's just about 20 meters south of Robson Street on Burrard. And at Joy Restaurant, we just hang out. You'll meet a lot of fundraisers, a lot of people from the nonprofit sector, just kind of swirling around, talking about jobs that are available. And again, it is free. You just, if you eat or drink anything, you do have to pay it, or be ready to dine and dash out of Joy's restaurant, which I don't recommend. And I'll just be there on Thursday. You can ask me afterwards if you want more details. Thank you,
Cool. Awesome. Introduce yourself. Tell us all about you.
Howdy. My name is Aidan, and I am the founder of Speakbox, a brand new organization that's forming here in Vancouver. We are changing the conversation on mental health, and we're one of those groups that's pretty tired with the way the media keeps portraying mental health. A couple things we're working on is we're going to put an education session together, working with some communication groups at SFU, hope to do it at Harbor Center. If any of you have circles of that, would love to talk to you. But what we want to do is we're going to bring people who have lived experience with mental health, and we're going to bring media from mainstream to community level, and we're going to do a little bit of education piece on how we should talk about mental health going forward. And the other thing was, what was the other thing? Oh, we're putting together a online, basically, communication channel, mainly with YouTube, and we're bringing together people with lived experience to showcase people not by their labels, not by their mental illness, but for the things that they do, and on a sub-note, they happen to also have a mental illness. So again, showcasing the positive, showcasing the solution, showcasing the change. So if you want to be involved in that, if you have good contacts that we can get in touch with, we'd love to talk to you. Or if you just want to see the new BlackBerry Z10, you can come check me out for that.
Awesome. So I can think of one more thing that might be worth mentioning. Who here is involved with the International Open Data Day / Hackathon? Anyone know anything about that? All right. Yeah, so tell us more. Dan, what's up with this thing?
Well, there's an Open Data Summit on the 19th, which is going to be a day-long event with lots of speakers, lightning talks, plenaries, all that wonderful stuff. I think the early bird is still open, but I'm not certain. And then on 23rd is International Open Data Day, and at City Hall in Victoria as well. And in Vancouver and various other places will be Open Data Hackathons. In theory, between now and then, Victoria is actually going to launch a very small but hopefully growing larger open data catalog. So a little bit behind, but
Apparently you can see the future. How do you know this?
did a lot of hard work.
I see, all right. All right, you guys are bashful, which means you have nothing else to show off about, so I'm going to let you guys go. We're going to loiter here for the next half hour, so if you want to chat, finish up the rest of the snacks, or help move tables and chairs, because you might need a little bit of help around that. I'm not going to complain. Otherwise, go. I'll see you in a month. Tell your friends about Net Tuesday. Thank you so much.